El día de hoy, el presidente Luis Arce Catacora participó en la Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas, donde mencionó que el gobierno golpista de Añez ha provocado un deterioro de la economía, poniendo en riesgo 14 años de crecimiento y progreso social. Mi gobierno hoy está enfocado en volver a la senda de la estabilidad y el crecimiento económico, mencionó Luis Arce Catacora, donde también dijo que tiene como priorización la erradicación de la pobreza. Arce hoy ha pedido a la Organización de Naciones Unidas el alivio a la deuda externa, cumpliendo con los compromisos asumidos. Hoy, la verdad, Bolivia tiene un presidente de lujo. Bolivia hoy tiene un presidente de lujo de primer nivel. Pocos presidentes manejan el inglés tan perfecto como el presidente Luis Arce Catacora, y hoy la verdad que es importante la participación del presidente, donde hoy está dando a conocer realmente cómo se encuentra Bolivia en estos momentos y qué es lo que tiene que hacer para sacar nuevamente adelante al país boliviano. Vamos a escuchar la intervención en la Asamblea General de Naciones Unidas al presidente plurinacional de Bolivia, Luis Arce Catacora.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have the honor of introducing the pre-recorded statement by His Excellency, President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia, Luis Arce Catacora. Mr. Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Volkan Bozkır, distinguished heads of state and government of the member states of the United Nations. As my first participation as the President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia in this important forum, I would like to affirm the commitment of my country to multilateralism and the principles enshrined in the UN Charter. At the same time, I would like to convey to you that on the 8th of November, Bolivia reaffirmed its commitment to democracy. And today I have the honor of leading a government that enjoys the confidence and legitimacy that has been expressed through the votes of the Bolivian people. Now I'd like to focus on the topic that brings us here. We'd like to thank Azerbaijan in its capacity as the chair of the Bureau of the Non-Aligned Movement for the initiative of convening this meeting, United Against COVID-19. Exactly a year ago, COVID-19 was an unknown virus that was distant from our reality. There are many theories that are being discussed by the scientific community regarding its emergence and possible cure. However, the reality is that all countries around the world have been swept up by this pandemic, and in particular, the most vulnerable countries and those in special situations. This is why this forum is so important, because individual and isolated efforts by countries are not going to resolve the sanitary crisis. Only through the joint efforts by countries, all countries and various specialized organizations in this area will we be able to do that. Mr. President, the political crisis of November of 2019 in Bolivia and the ineffectual administration of the government at the time led to a deterioration of the Bolivian economy, which was aggravated by the pandemic, and thus put at risk the major social progress that had been achieved over the 14 years of administration by a democratically elected government. According to data of ECLAC, Latin America and the Caribbean is expected to experience a contraction of economic activity in 2020. The regional GDP will drop by 9.1%. In my country, GDP will drop by 11.1%. This, of course, leads to an increase in unemployment, poverty, and inequality. It's a situation that clearly represents a step back with regard to the prior economic performance when our country led South America in economic growth between 2006 and 2019. Now my government is focused on returning to the path of economic stability and growth. ensuring continuity to the community-based productive system of economic and social development, to restore to the Bolivian people the well-being that was brutally taken away from them in November 2019. Now, in the framework of to do this in the framework of the response to the pandemic and to prevent renewed flare-ups, we are making special efforts to acquire safe vaccines and to provide them freely to 3 million Bolivians. This includes the most vulnerable groups and healthcare workers. Our goal is to achieve this target during the first quarter of 2021, and without a doubt, cooperation of international organizations, of UN, of specialized agencies, and of friendly countries will be essential to achieve this goal. Mr. Secretary General, heads of state and government, this pandemic has highlighted the massive inequalities and vulnerabilities in both in developing countries and in developed countries, but the impact has not been the same. There have been inadequate healthcare systems, gaps in social protection, structural inequalities, environmental deterioration, and of course the climate crisis. All this have laid bare the fragility of entire population groups in our countries. And in precisely the eradication of poverty and extreme poverty continue to be major challenge and one of the priorities for my government. Today more than ever, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development requires complying with international commitments with regard to financing for development, to which can be added financing needs to confront the consequences of the pandemic and transfer of technologies. In this context, we hope to be able to count on the due comprehension and solidarity in international cooperation, in particular official development aid. It's essential to mobilize different sources and instruments of financing and forgiveness of external debt. This situation requires solution with a systemic approach that takes into account the impact on prices of raw materials and international trade, stability of supply chains, and income from tourism, levels of remittances, employment, and fiscal receipts. Changes in all these economic variables, especially for developing countries, could put many of these countries at the risk of taking on too much debt, both internally and externally. In the face of this situation, it's important to ensure mechanisms of easing the debt burden, and international financial organizations must continue to provide liquidity and debt forgiveness. Mr. President, current challenges require close cooperation among states. In a world of interconnected threats, solidarity must be in the interest of all states and all international actors. Any situation must be dealt with through multilateralism. Therefore, Bolivia would like to reaffirm its determination to work with the international community, always respecting the principles of solidarity, equality among states, the self-determination of peoples, national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. Thank you very much.
I wish to thank the Constitutional President of the Republic of the Plurinational State of Bolivia for the statement just made.